Many people know all about the famous 10 Commandments God gave Moses for the people of Israel. Most people, however, seem to have forgotten there were many other laws and commandments God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. In this video, we will cover the main 10 Commandments, why people mainly focus on these 10, and what sets them apart from the rest. We will also cover the lesser-known commandments and why and how God gave these commandments to Moses. Let's jump right into it, after Egypt. In the 3rd month after God delivered the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt by crossing the Red Sea, they traveled through the desert to Sinai, where they camped in front of a mountain. Also called Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai is a very significant place. It is here that God met and spoke with Moses, telling him why he had rescued Israel from Egypt. God had chosen the people of Israel to be his treasured people, and Israel would be made into a holy nation of priests for God. So Moses went up to God. God said, "Tell the people of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I brought you out of Egypt. Now, if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be special to me above all people." Moses returned and called for the elders of the people. He told them God would make an agreement with Israel, a covenant, and take care of them if they obeyed his words. The people said, "We will do all that the Lord wants us to do." Moses went back to God and told him what the people had said. Then God said to Moses, "Tell the people to wash their clothes and be ready for the 3rd day. On the 3rd day I will come down on Mount Sinai." The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. "Tell them not to go up to the mountain or touch it. Anyone who touches the mountain will die. When the trumpet sounds long, they shall come near the mountain." Again, Moses went down from the mountain and got the people ready. Moses consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. Then he said to the people, "Prepare yourselves for the 3rd day. Abstain from sexual relations." Mount Sinai. On the morning of the 3rd day, there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. The 10 Commandments. Then God spoke all the words of the 10 Commandments. "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet." The people were scared. They told Moses, "You speak with us, and we will hear. But we are afraid if God speaks to us again, we will die." God then called Moses back up to the top of the mountain and gave many other laws and commandments to Moses to relay to the people of Israel, in addition to the 10 Commandments as described in Exodus chapter 20, chapter 35. Most people seem to forget this, or think the 10 Commandments is all Moses received from God on Mount Sinai. The other commandments. Here are the other commandments that have been left out of most people's minds. 1. Idols and altars. The Lord instructs Moses to convey to the Israelites that they should not create any other gods besides him, particularly gods made of silver or gold. Instead, they are to construct an altar using earth and offer burnt offerings, fellowship offerings, and various livestock upon it. The Lord promises to bless them wherever his name is honored. Additionally, if they choose to build an altar with stones, it should not be made with dressed stones or tools, as this would defile it. Furthermore, they are advised not to approach the altar using steps to avoid exposing their private parts. 2. Hebrew servants. A Hebrew servant is to serve for 6 years, and in the 7th year, they are to be released without payment. If the servant came with a wife, she goes free with him. But if the master provided him with a wife and she bears children, Only the servant goes free while the family remains with the master. If a servant chooses to stay because of love for the master and the master's family, a symbolic ear-piercing ceremony is performed and the servant serves for life. In the case of selling a daughter as a servant, different rules apply. If she doesn't please the master who selected her for himself, he can't sell her to foreigners, but must allow her to be redeemed. If the master selects her for his son, she is entitled to the rights of a daughter. If the master takes another wife, he must still provide food, clothing, and marital rights to the first wife. Failure to do so results in her freedom without payment. 3. Personal injuries. Anyone intentionally causing a fatal injury will be put to death. If it's unintentional, the person must flee to a designated place. Deliberate murder results in the death penalty, even if the person seeks refuge at the altar. Attacking one's parents, kidnapping, and cursing parents are offenses punishable by death. In cases of non-lethal quarrels causing injury, the aggressor must compensate the victim for any loss of time and ensure full recovery. Physical abuse of slaves resulting in death demands punishment. If the slave recovers after a day or two, there is no penalty since the slave is considered property. If a pregnant woman is accidentally harmed, the offender must pay a fine determined by the woman's husband and the court. Serious injury requires life-for-life compensation. Injuries caused by animals have specific consequences. A goring bull is stoned to death if it kills a person, and its owner may face punishment if the bull had a history of violence. If a pit causes harm, the one who opened it is liable for compensation. Bull-on-bull injuries result in a financial settlement, with the aggressive bull's owner paying for damages. 4. Protection of property. Whoever steals and slaughters an ox or a sheep must pay restitution, returning 5 cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is caught breaking in at night and is fatally struck, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. However, if it occurs after sunrise, the defender is guilty. Any thief must make restitution. If unable, they must be sold to repay the theft. If the stolen animal is found alive, double restitution is required. If livestock graze in someone else's field, the offender must make restitution from the best of their own field or vineyard. The person responsible for a fire that damages another's property must make restitution. If items entrusted for safekeeping are stolen, the thief must repay double. If the thief is not found, a judgment is made by the judges. In cases of disputed possession, both parties present their cases to the judges, who determine guilt. The guilty party pays double to the other. If an animal entrusted to a neighbor is lost or harmed without anyone witnessing it, an oath before the Lord settles the matter. If stolen, restitution is required. Borrowed animals that are injured or die while the owner is absent require restitution. If the owner is present, no payment is necessary. For hired animals, the paid fee covers any losses. 5. Laws of justice and mercy. Avoid spreading false reports and refrain from assisting the guilty as a malicious witness. Do not follow the crowd in wrongdoing, and avoid showing favoritism, whether to the rich or the poor, in legal matters. Return your enemy's lost ox or donkey, and assist even those who dislike you, helping their fallen donkey under its load. Ensure justice for the poor in legal matters, reject false charges, and avoid unjustly putting innocent or honest individuals to death. Refuse bribes, as they blind judgment and distort the words of the innocent, and do not oppress foreigners, remembering your own experience as foreigners in Egypt. 6. Sabbath laws. For 6 years, you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. But during the 7th year, the land, vineyards, and olive groves are to remain unplowed and unused. This practice allows the poor to gather food from the land, and what remains is left for wild animals. Additionally, on the 7th day of each week, a day of rest is mandated. This Sabbath day is meant for all, including animals and even foreign residents, to experience refreshment. Later in this video, we will cover why these extra laws and commandments have been overlooked compared to the 10 Commandments. Moses goes back to the mountain. Now back to our story. In Exodus chapter 24, after all the commandments were given to Moses and he relayed them to the Israelites, God asked Moses to come to the top of the mountain and meet him. He asked Moses to come with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, but only Moses was allowed to come all the way up to the very top and the rest must still worship at a distance, although closer than the rest of the Israelite people. Before they went up, Moses shared the Lord's words and laws with the people, and they committed to following them. Moses wrote down these instructions, built an altar, and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Burnt offerings and fellowship offerings are made, and half of the blood is sprinkled on the altar. Moses reads the book of the covenant, and the people pledge obedience. Moses then sprinkles blood on the people, symbolizing the covenant with the Lord. Verse 9 says, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the elders went up to see the God of Israel and eat and drink in his presence. But God did not raise his hands against the elders, Aaron and the rest. The Lord invites Moses to the very top of the mountain, promising to give him stone tablets with the law. Moses, accompanied by Joshua, ascends the mountain, instructing the elders to wait where they were. As Moses ascends, a cloud covers the mountain, and the glory of the Lord settles on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covers the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord calls to Moses from within the cloud. The glory of the Lord appears as a consuming fire. Moses entered the cloud and stayed with God on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and God gave Moses 2 tablets of stone on which he had written the 10 commandments with his own finger. The golden calf. Moses stayed so long on the mountain, the people thought he wasn't going to return. They decided to build an idol, a golden calf. They had seen the pagan idols that Egypt worshipped and copied that. Aaron took gold earrings from all the people and molded them into a golden calf for the people to worship. This was a great sin against God, just 40 days after the covenant with God. When Moses came down from the mountain, he was carrying the tablets. Then he saw the golden calf and the people dancing around it. He became so angry, he threw the 2 tablets down at the foot of the mountain, smashing them to pieces. His breaking of the tablets was symbolic of the laws of God being broken in the hearts of his people. Moses then destroyed the golden calf, burning it in the fire. He shouted, "All those who are on God's side, come near to me!" All the men of the tribe of Levi came to him. On Moses' order, they went forward and killed those who had committed this sin. Writing the commandments again. Then God told Moses to come back up the mountain and bring 2 stone tablets. God wrote the commandments down again with his finger. Moses was on the mountain with God for another 40 days and 40 nights. Moses returned to the people carrying the 2 tablets of stone with the 10 commandments written on them. What sets the 10 commandments apart from the rest? The 10 commandments are distinct from the other commandments and laws in the Old Testament. God wrote the 10 commandments with his own finger. Exodus 31 verse 18 says, God gave Moses tablets of stone written with the finger of God. The other laws were written by the pen of Moses. The 10 commandments were engraved on stone to communicate that they are fixed and permanent. God wrote the rest of the Old Covenant laws through Moses on paper. The 10 commandments were revealed in a unique way. God gave the 10 commandments on Mount Sinai with loud thunder, flashes of lightning, a thick cloud, and a very loud trumpet blast. No other laws were revealed this way. It was a striking and emotional experience for those who were there. God wanted it to be memorable. He intended the 10 commandments to stand out in the minds of his people above all other laws. He wanted to impact their senses so that they would never forget the distinctive importance of these 10 words. The 10 commandments are the first part of God's law system. In essence, they are a summary of the hundreds of laws found in the Old Testament law. Designed to guide Israel into a life of practical holiness, the 10 commandments offer basic rules of behavior for spiritual and moral living. In general, the first 4 commandments are directed toward God and our obligations to Him. The next 6 focus on our duties toward other people in the community. Together, the 10 serve to create a community devoted to one God that is characterized by social justice.